I arrived in Mykonos with 3 shirts, 0 beach towels, and a suitcase full of good intentions. The moment the taxi door opened, the heat slapped me across the face like a sassy aunt who hadn't seen me since Christmas. It smelled like sunscreen, grilled octopus, and just a hint of desperation. Mine, mostly. Technically, this was a break. Spiritually, a soft reboot. When I told my boss I needed some time off to decompress, I think she assumed I meant yoga or therapy, not fleeing to a Greek island with spotty Wi-Fi and a suspicious number of shirtless Australians. But here I am, armed with 2 too-tight swim trunks and a fantasy where I accidentally fall in love with a local bartender who calls me babe and teaches me how to ride a scooter. The hotel was one of those boutique places that probably looked better in the 2012 TripAdvisor photos. Faded turquoise walls, a suspiciously quiet and tiny saltwater pool, and a receptionist named Claudia who gave me a room key, a complimentary sun hat, and a look that said, "We both know you overpaid." After a quick change into my most optimistic linen shirt, I made my way down the whitewashed alley to a bar with sea view, apparently one of the 1,000 places to see before you die. Not officially on my bucket list, but hey, I was here now. Might as well check off something I hadn't realized I was supposed to care about. The path was all uneven stones and blinding light, but I kept imagining I'd turn a corner and bump into someone, a stranger with strong arms and tragic eyes, who'd smile like he'd been waiting for me since last summer. You know, the kind of man who says, "You're not like the others," before whisking you away on a Vespa to his grandmother's vineyard. Spoiler, I turned the corner. There was no man, just a seagull that tried to steal my sunglasses. I ordered a spritz at the bar anyway, because when you're single in Mykonos and having a minor identity crisis, you order a spritz. It's international law. The bartender was beautiful, in that bored, bronzed way that says, "Yes, I do modeling on the side," and "No, I don't remember your name from last night." I took my drink and wandered toward the lounge chairs, staring out at the water like someone in a coming-of-age film. Waves lapped gently, the sun flirted with my shoulders. I spent the next hour doing what all emotionally mature men do at the beach, taking overly aesthetic photos of my cocktail, scrolling Instagram, and glancing around casually to see if fate had dropped off my future husband yet. Nothing. Fine, I told myself. Fate was running late. Greek island time, right? 2 spritzes later, I felt brave enough to make direct eye contact with the bartender and order lunch. He gave me a nod that said, "Yes, I will bring you food, but please don't fall in love with me. I don't have the emotional bandwidth for another needy tourist, unless you tip exceptionally well." Message received. I settled back in my lounge chair, cracked open my pretentious paperback, some novel about love and loss in an Italian village, and tried not to wonder if this solo vacation had been a terrible idea. That's when I caught sight of someone, further down the bar, sitting on a low stool, facing the sea. There was something familiar about him. The easy slouch of his shoulders, the playful tap of his sandals against the chair leg as he read. My brain did a little backflip, trying to match the figure in front of me to the blurry image of a person who'd spent 3 semesters unknowingly hijacking my daydreams. I shifted slightly, trying to peek at his face without being obvious, but subtlety has never been my strength, and apparently neither has balance. My chair creaked loudly, betraying my dignity. He turned slightly, curious about the idiot disturbing the peace. My heart stopped. Oh no. Oh no, no, no. Oh yes. Luca, college language partner, secretly crushed on study buddy, once asked me, "Can I borrow your pen?" and made it sound impossibly intimate. It had been 5 years, but the eyes gave him away instantly. Warm brown, filled with mischief, and framed by annoyingly perfect eyebrows. He still had the look of someone who woke up casually gorgeous, unaware that normal people didn't operate that way. His eyes widened slightly, a slow smile tugging at his lips as he recognized me. "Alex?" he asked, incredulous and delighted. Luca. My voice cracked slightly, betraying years of repressed embarrassment. He laughed, a warm, rich sound I'd forgotten I missed, and hopped down from his stool. The hug caught me off guard. Brief, friendly, painfully platonic. What are the odds? Are you stalking me across continents now? You wish. Pure coincidence. Or maybe fate. I immediately regretted saying fate out loud, but he just laughed again, seemingly charmed by my awkwardness. Vacation? He asked, pulling his stool closer to my spot. Yeah, burnout therapy disguised as relaxation. You? He shrugged lightly, looking out at the turquoise sea. Rebound therapy disguised as self-discovery. Brilliant, I said. Maybe we can be disasters together. He raised his glass toward me, eyes sparkling with amusement. Deal. 2 beautiful messes on Mykonos. Cheers to that. As our glasses clinked, something shifted. Or maybe it was just the spritz going straight to my head, but I felt a little bubble of hope that, just maybe, this trip wasn't just about running away. Maybe it was about finally running towards something. Or someone. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of seagulls fighting over a baguette outside my window and the unmistakable sensation of sunburn across my shoulders. Apparently, SPF 5 and optimism weren't enough. I made my way to the beach with a towel, a half-hearted plan to journal about inner peace, and okay, fine, a tiny hope I might run into Luca again. I didn't have to wait long. He appeared like a Greek god in swim trunks, carrying 2 iced coffees and flashing a grin that made my sunscreen sweat off instantly. Thought you might need this, he said, handing me one. You're an angel. I know, he said, settling into the lounge chair beside me, and so humble too. We spent the morning people-watching and inventing fake backstories for the couples around us. One pair, we decided, was secretly in the witness protection program. Another were obviously exes, pretending to be just friends on a group trip. The fact that we both landed on the same wildly dramatic interpretation said everything I needed to know. Eventually, he suggested paddleboarding. I suggested therapy. He won. Spoiler, I have the balance of a baby giraffe on roller skates. Luca, of course, glided across the water like he was auditioning for a cologne commercial. I, on the other hand, fell off twice, lost one of my flip-flops to Poseidon, and nearly took out a French tourist named Jean-Luc with my flailing. When I finally gave up and swam back, Luca was waiting for me on the shore, laughing as he handed me a towel. Well, he said, you gave it your all. I gave it about 40%, to be honest, wringing seawater from my soul. We collapsed into the sand, breathless and sun-dazed. It was the kind of moment where the world goes quiet, the sea glitters just for you, and the air smells like something about to begin. You know, I said, I always thought you'd end up doing something like this, living on an island, maybe opening a yoga cafe with rescued cats. Luca chuckled. I did try yoga once, nearly passed out during Downward Dog. I nudged him with my elbow. So what are you actually doing here? He paused, eyes on the waves. I was in a relationship, 5 years. We broke up 2 months ago. I needed to get away, rethink things, remember who I was before I became someone else's idea of me. It was unexpectedly honest and strangely familiar. I get that, I said. Mine wasn't a breakup, just life burnout. I kept checking boxes and waking up tired. So I bought a plane ticket and told my plants they were on their own. He looked at me. Not in a dramatic, slow-motion movie way, just kindly, like I made sense. We stayed there until the sun started dipping, trading tiny confessions and lazy smiles. Somewhere between the third sangria and his story about getting kicked out of a Berlin club for dancing too enthusiastically, I realized my cheeks were sore from laughing, and I couldn't remember the last time that had happened. Not with someone. Not like this. That evening, we wandered into town just before golden hour. Tipsy from sangria and sunscreen fumes, Mykonos was doing her thing. Whitewashed houses glowing like iced cakes, blue doors flung open to let out the smell of oregano and grilled something delicious. Luca walked beside me, arm grazing mine now and then casually, like it didn't mean anything. Of course, it meant everything. We ended up in one of those tiny restaurants with 4 tables and a menu that looked handwritten by someone's grandmother. The owner kissed Luca on both cheeks, called him Lukaki, and brought us house wine that tasted like trouble and romance. Over dinner, we talked about everything and nothing. We had told each other things people don't usually confess on vacation, like dreams, regrets, favorite types of bread. His was sourdough. Mine was whatever comes in a basket with olive oil. After dessert, which was possibly just honey on a spoon, we wandered down a narrow path towards the sea again, shoes in hand, the stars out and showing off. There was a breeze now, soft and salty, and for a second, I forgot I was supposed to be healing or resetting, or whatever reason I'd written on the "Why are you traveling" card at the airport. He stopped walking. I stopped too. He looked at me, searching. "Alex, this has been unexpected." Good unexpected? The best kind. We stood there for a second too long, eyes locked, breath caught, gravity leaning in. I felt him move closer. Barely. Just enough. "Luca?" The voice cut through the night like a badly timed text notification. Luca froze. His eyes widened slightly. I turned, confused. A figure stood a few meters away, silhouetted by moonlight. Tall, shirt unbuttoned, tan in that I'm not even trying kind of way. He stepped forward. "Kevin." Luca's voice is flat, careful. Of course his name was Kevin. Kevin looked at me, then back at Luca. "So, this is where you disappeared to." "I didn't disappear," Luca said tightly. "We broke up." Kevin gave a hollow laugh. "Sure, and now you're having emotional support moments with... Sorry, what's your name?" I blinked. "Alex." "Alex," Kevin repeated, tasting it like it offended him. Luca stepped slightly in front of me, not protective exactly, but not either. "I thought you were in Berlin," Luca said. "I was. Then I remembered this place. Our place." The words landed heavy. Our place. Suddenly the beach didn't feel quite so breezy. "I came to think," Kevin continued, "and then I saw you, and I realized maybe I made a mistake." Silence. Kevin took a step closer. "I miss you." Another step. "You look happy." Then, softer, almost a whisper. "Is it real?" Luca didn't answer. Not right away. His expression was unreadable. I felt something sink in my stomach. Not jealousy, not yet. Just the ache of something unfinished, stepping back into the room like it still had a key. Kevin turned to go. "I'm staying at the little white villa behind the church. Our old room. In case you want to talk." He walked off without waiting for a reply, disappearing into the night like an unwanted memory. I didn't say anything. Neither did Luca. He looked at me. Eyes soft, but distant now. That wasn't supposed to happen. "I gathered," I said, trying to smile. Luca took a breath. "I didn't know he'd be here, I swear." "I believe you." But the moment was gone. The kiss that almost happened was buried under a tide of hesitation. We walked back in silence. No hand-holding, no starlit kiss, just the soft sound of the waves and the ache of a door that had suddenly reopened. The next morning, I didn't have a plan. I sat at a cafe overlooking the harbor, sipping lukewarm coffee and picking at a croissant like it had personally betrayed me. Mykonos was doing that thing again, being beautiful without permission. Boats bobbed lazily in the water. A cat slept on someone's scooter. It was a scene begging for a kiss. Or a breakup. I hadn't decided which yet. Alex? I turned. Luca. Same tired eyes, same gray t-shirt, same effect on my blood pressure. Can we talk? He asked. He looked unsure, and that scared me more than if he'd looked confident. I nodded, mostly because I couldn't come up with a good reason not to. We walked to the edge of the quay, where the stones were already warm from the sun. He leaned against a faded blue railing and looked out at the sea. I want to explain, he said. You don't have to. I do. Silence. Then, slowly, Kevin wasn't always like that. He used to be kind, thoughtful. He'd bring me pastries after class, rub my back when I was stressed. I fell for him fast. I stayed quiet. But as time went on, it changed. He started needing me to be smaller so he could feel bigger. I stopped choosing things, stopped thinking about what I wanted. I was just there to orbit him. I swallowed. So why did you freeze last night? Because for the first time in 2 years, he looked at me like he actually saw me again. And part of me wanted to believe it meant something. And the other part? He turned to me. The other part wanted to kiss you. That hurt more than I expected. He continued, when we were in college, I liked you, but I thought you were out of my league. You were sweet, curious. You listened. Kevin never really did. I laughed once, sharp. Well, you sure chose the listener in the end. He winced. I know. I stared at the stones beneath my feet. I like you, Luca, but I'm not going to be the guy someone leaves someone else for, even if you already left. I don't want to be that story. He nodded slowly. I don't want you to be either. We stood there for a long time. Eventually, he said, so, what now? I forced a smile. Now, we both enjoy the rest of our vacation separately with dignity. He didn't like it. I could see it in the way he clenched his jaw like it kept trying to say things his heart wasn't ready to admit. But he nodded. Okay. He left with one final glance over his shoulder. I stayed there, watching the sea, wondering why the waves always sounded lonelier after someone walks away. Over the next few days, I did everything you're supposed to do after a dramatic, almost romance. I tried to move on. First, there was Nikos, shirtless, oiled, and gifted in the torso department. He slid into my lounge chair like we'd met in a body spray commercial and asked, "You here for the vibes?" That was the entire pitch. I told him I had sunscreen in my eye and left before he started calling me babe without earning it. Then came Julien. Scarf in 30-degree heat, French accent thicker than his ego, and an Instagram handle he introduced before his name. @Jules Voyageur, he said. 78,000 followers, mostly lifestyle and lips. He called me mysterious and spent 20 minutes angling his phone to get a sun-dazed candid of himself. I asked what kind of bread he liked. Carbs are for peasants, he said without blinking. That was our final conversation. Then there was Marco. Sweet smile, built like a romantic comedy extra. He joined me at a wine tasting and nodded seriously when I said the wine had body. Wait, does that mean someone died in the barrel? I laughed. He didn't. Later, he toasted me with a sugar packet, then spilled half his rosé on my lap. I made a joke about grape expectations. He gave me a thumbs up and said, "Totally." I laughed again. This time, it sounded almost like goodbye. The rest of the week blurred. Bars, polite flirtations, people with dazzling teeth and empty questions. A kiss on the cheek here, a compliment there. All light, all hollow.
Everyone was lovely. No one felt right. By day 4, I'd stopped checking every cafe for Luca. By day 5, I started packing. Then I heard the soft knock. I opened the door. No one. Just a folded note on the floor. I know now what I want. I'll be waiting at the beach tonight. Same spot, sunset. I hope to see you. L. I read the note 100 times. Then I folded it carefully, slipped it into my passport, and didn't go. Not because I didn't want to see him, but because I did too much. Because if he said he'd chosen Kevin, that it had always been Kevin, then that was it. Game over. And this little dream I'd been living, the could be, the maybe, would vanish in an instant. So I stayed away. Cowardly, maybe, but safe.
I arrived at the airport 2 hours early. 3 if you count the emotional buffer zone. My bag was packed with regret and travel-sized toiletries. The note from Luca was still tucked in my passport, folded neatly, still glowing with the possibility of something that hadn't been broken yet. I told myself I was being smart. Clean exit, minimal damage. Let the universe keep the ending vague, I'd live longer. But the truth? I just couldn't bear to know, because as long as I didn't hear the answer, he could still have chosen me. So I waited in the departure lounge, trying to look like someone who was definitely fine and not spiraling into 1,000 what-ifs. I bought a cinnamon pastry I didn't eat, watched a family take selfies with an inflatable flamingo, tried to read the same sentence in my book 7 times. Failed. A boarding announcement crackled overhead. My gate lit up. I stood. And that's when I heard it. Not the announcement, not the overhead chime. Alex! I froze, turned, and there he was. Luca, out of breath, shirt half buttoned, flip-flops in one hand, passport in the other, like he'd sprinted through every terminal in Europe. People were staring. He didn't care. He walked right up to me, panting slightly, eyes wide. He said, "I went to the beach." I waited. I thought maybe, God, I was so sure you'd come. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Just static and heartbeats. He continued, "I talked to Kevin. Really talked. I told him goodbye." He looked at me, eyes searching. He said, "I realized I've been living in memories, trying to fix a past that's already gone. But with you, it's not fixing, it's starting." I swallowed. I thought I was just a rebound. "You're not," he said, stepping closer. "You're the first thing that's felt real in a long time." I stared at him, then laughed, just a little. "You're seriously doing this at my gate? You know you're one emotional declaration away from being a Netflix original movie." He smiled. I figured I had one cliche left in me. There was a pause. Then I said, "If this is a stunt and you leave me crying in row 17 with a complimentary cookie, I will hunt you down and key your Vespa." He grinned. "I don't even have a Vespa. Yet." We stared at each other, and then, finally, we kissed. Soft, unhurried, like we'd waited exactly long enough. Somewhere, someone clapped. I ignored them. I was too busy memorizing the moment. When we broke apart, I leaned my forehead against his. "So, now what?" "Well," he said, "I booked the seat next to yours." I blinked. "You what?" He held up a boarding pass. The nice lady at the desk said there were 2 left, and one was next to the handsome man with sad eyes and a cinnamon pastry. I knew I looked sad. He thought you looked hopeful. I rolled my eyes. "You're ridiculous." He kissed my cheek. "You like ridiculous." I did. I do. I always will. We boarded the plane together,
And somewhere over the Aegean, as the clouds rolled beneath us and the flight attendant brought us a free bottle of wine for being cute, I realized something. This wasn't just a summer fling. This was the start of something real. And the view? Not bad either. The beach hadn't changed. Still smug, still sparkling, still pretending it didn't emotionally traumatize me 12 months ago. But this time, I came prepared. With sunscreen, with wine, and with the man I didn't kiss here last summer. Luca spread out the blanket with a dramatic flair like we were about to picnic on a Vogue cover. He looked even better than I remembered. More relaxed, less haunted, tan in that I live with intention and exfoliate now kind of way. I handed him a spritz. So, déjà vu? He took a sip, with less emotional panic and more actual hydration. We sat quietly for a while, watching the waves and the tourists and the occasional speedboat full of shirtless Australians. I said, "This is where you almost kissed me." He glanced at me. "Technically, you almost kissed me." I raised an eyebrow. "Please. I was radiating emotionally available energy. You flinched like I was a stray volleyball." He grinned. "Well, I flinch less now." And then, under the exact same stars, with the same sea licking our ankles and no ex-boyfriend in sight, he kissed me. No hesitation, no fear, just everything we hadn't said and everything we now knew. Afterwards, he rested his forehead against mine. "Worth the wait?" he asked. I smiled. "Ask me again next summer."